Assassin's Creed Black Flag is widely seen as one of the best in the series, and Ubisoft has definitely been in need of a big win over the last few years, which is why a remake of AC4 is a no-brainer. News of an Assassin's Creed Black Flag remake leaked a couple of years ago, but as of making this video, Ubisoft still hasn't formally announced it. But that doesn't mean there hasn't been any development on the project, and we recently just got a ton of insider information about the game and how it's going to differ from the original. In this video, we're going to be going over all the news that's coming out about Assassin's Creed Black Flag's remake, including new gameplay details and how it's going to tie into the new Assassin's Creed canon. We have a lot to cover, guys, so check the video chapters for easy viewing, and let's dive in. If you ever game with your friends and have a few drinks, you know how rough the next day can feel. And as I've gotten older, I kind of accepted that if I did some drinking, the next day would just kind of be a disaster. I try to sleep through it most of the time, but when the grind is real, you kind of just have to work through the pain. But that pain can be mitigated thanks to today's video sponsor, ZBiotics. They hit me up about this opportunity. I told them I didn't drink much, but I just so happened to be playing a lot of Beer Kart with my brother. We both took it before we started playing, and it worked pretty well. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut, and it's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. And pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. You can check out ZBiotics pre-alcohol via the link in the description. But first things first, let's go over the gameplay changes that are going to be coming out with the remake, because apparently it's not going to be just a one-to-one recreation of the original game, as well as the combat specifically. Up to this point, we've been under the impression that the remake would basically be a refinement of the original AC4's combat system, but according to this new report, the combat is actually going to be significantly overhauled and is instead going to be closer to the combat scene in the RPG era of Assassin's Creed games. The leak also claims that the remake will feature loot and gear stats for Edward, which also ties into the game's engine, which is apparently going to be the Anvil pipeline engine, the same one as Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now, this is definitely going to be a massive roadblock for some people, because I know some fans of the older Assassin's Creed games fell off the franchise because they didn't like the new RPG style of gameplay. But if this report is to be believed, AC4's remake is going to basically turn it into a modern Assassin's Creed RPG through the combat, progression, and the gear system, which might be good news to some of you, but it might also be horrible news to some others in the audience. I think it all really comes down to what your opinion of the RPG era of Assassin's Creed is. And obviously this isn't going to be quite as heavy on the RPG elements as the games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey or AC Shadows, but the combat, the gear systems are going to be much closer to the recent RPG style Assassin's Creed games and will not resemble the original game's combat and progression. So yeah, if you're looking for like a direct one-to-one recreation of AC4, according to this leak, that is not going to be the case, which that's kind of the reason why they're calling this AC Black Flag Remake rather than AC4 Remastered or Assassin's Creed Black Flag Remastered. I mean, they could still call it that technically, but let's be real, this is a full from the ground up remake, especially if they're completely switching what engine they're using. Now, I won't lie, I'm a bit on the fence on this situation. Like, in some ways, I do like the fact that this next game is going to be an RPG style, mainly because I do appreciate some of the AC RPGs, but I also feel like this is a drastic change that might take away the appeal of what made AC4 so special in the first place. So it's really a fine line. If they can mix the two well, it could work. But in some ways, I almost like wish they would like give us a classic mode for the remake where it does feel like the original, but then they just have like an RPG mode where you like select the option and it makes the game more of an RPG. When it comes to the open world for Assassin's Creed Black Flag's remake, Ubisoft is apparently making some changes in order to accommodate the remake's focus on the RPG mechanics and gear systems, but it's not actually going to be that different from the OG. The report claims that AC4's remake will feature a map that is more or less the same size as the original games, and the layout of the map will be pretty much the same, but it will be much more heavily filled with activities and side content, which is presumably being done so you could level up your skills and find new gear by completing side quests or taking out enemy bases that spread around the map. So on one hand, I think it's nice that they seem to be keeping the open world the same as before, but on the other hand, I am a little worried that it's going to be overly cluttered this time around, since obviously the original game's map wasn't built with the RPG type side quests in mind. Granted, there were plenty of spaces in the original game's map that did feel empty, and filling up those spots could be relatively easy, but again, I think there's a very fine line that could be walked here, so we'll see if Ubisoft pulls it off. I'm a bit hesitant in terms of this, open world map change. I almost wish that they didn't decide to go with like the same size more or less, and they just decided to make it even more expansive, because I do feel like there are so many opportunities to make this world really feel unique and special. But on a more positive note, the report also claims that there will be no loading screens between land and sea this time around, which should make the experience much more seamless. And obviously that's going to be seen as a universally good change. I mean, they are using the new Anvil engine, and if we saw how AC Shadows worked and even the previous AC games, limiting the amount of loading screens is a positive. But yeah, I am really curious to see what this open world is going to look like. I'm excited. I'm a bit hesitant because if it is just a one-to-one recreation in terms of the world size, that is a bit disappointing, but again, I'm just looking forward to exploring the map again and finding places that I haven't discovered before. Like, part of the appeal of an Assassin's Creed game is the sense of discovery, so having the map that's more or less the same might, lose that sense of discovery that we would get on a new Assassin's Creed title. Next up, in regards to the story, Ubisoft is apparently making some changes both to streamline storytelling while also making AC4 fit more nicely into the current Assassin's Creed canon. There have been a lot of rumors floating around over the last few years about Ubisoft remaking old AC games and adjusting these stories to make them fit into the current AC canon, and that's apparently what's going on here. The report claims that AC4 Remake will be cutting most of, if not all of, the modern day sections and replacing them with some new content during the age of piracy, including some new story content that was cut from the original game, specifically a plot thread with Mary Read that had been scrapped during the development of the original game. So you won't have your pirate adventure interrupted with sequences outside of the Animus this time around, and instead it's going to be a pirate adventure from start to finish. All of the original game's plot is going to be there, plus some new stuff to flesh out the game story and ultimately making the runtime a little longer than the OG. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments, but I think this is generally seen as a good change, because as much as I know we love the original, there's no denying that some of the modern day sequences were kind of a pacing killer, and I think a lot of us would be happy to have those sequences replaced with more time in Pirate Land. Now, the report did make a few statements about how the game is being funded, as Ubisoft has been in a very difficult financial position recently, and they probably don't have a lot of money lying around for remakes like this, even though they did get like a bunch of funding from, I think it was Tencent. So maybe they do have some money to, throw around for remakes like this, but the report claims that the scale of the AC4 remake is not nearly as large as other remakes like, Silent Hill 2 or the Resident Evil remakes, but it's a faithful update to the original game with a lot of hefty changes to make it feel new. Now, the budget is relatively low compared to other Ubisoft projects, and one of the ways they're keeping costs down is by recycling a bunch of assets from Skull and Bones. Although the report also says that the method in which they're recycling things will make it so hardly anyone will be able to notice, which I think will end up being true. I mean, Skull and Bones was in development for over a decade, and the team made a ton of pirate-themed assets during the process, so you might as well find some new use for them, right? And since hardly anyone really played Skull and Bones, like, I played it a bit, but, it was pretty much, I would say it's a game of all time. I imagine the risk of people noticing the recycled assets is pretty low, and let's be fair, tons of games use recycled assets, and we hardly ever notice. As long as the AC4 remake is good, I don't think people are going to care about some of it being reused from a different pirate game. Now, in addition to all of these changes being made to the gameplay and story and the open world map, some fans have raised concern over the fact that Ubisoft seems to be planning on removing the original AC4 game from digital storefronts. At least that's been the concern and the rumor. The publisher hasn't made any official statement either way, but people have started noticing little details on the Steam page of the original Assassin's Creed 4 that suggest that something is coming in the near future. The store page for Assassin's Creed Black Flag was quietly updated recently with features that aren't actually in the game, but are expected to be in the remake, which definitely suggests that the remake is going to replace the original game on Steam, which definitely wouldn't go over well for gamers. Now, I will have to say it could be a situation where it was like a copy and paste issue, where like they took the original game and they like copied it to make the updates for the, you know, the new game store page, but then they accidentally like pasted it and then saved it, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing. But I will say, if they do decide to remove it, people are not going to like that at all. Gamers do not like it when stuff gets removed from a sale in order of a remake that may or may not have stuff that we liked about the original. I think if they took the Rockstar approach with GTA 5, where you had like the classic GTA 5 and then they had the expanded and enhanced, they gave people the option to continue to play whatever version they want. I think that would be a good idea. Now, if they decided to just remove it from storefronts, that would be a disaster. And not to mention, Ubisoft in particular has been getting themselves into some pretty hot water recently by removing some of their older games from sale. So I'm really hoping this was just an honest mistake by someone over at Ubisoft, because as good as the AC4 remake may end up being, I definitely do not want to see the OG game get deleted. Nobody benefits from that. But that's going to wrap it up with this video, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe with your noties on. And until next time, this has been Wes, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.